Welcome and welcome back to our final session of the formal World Circular Economy Forum. Peter Woodward here.
Veera Heinonen.
And we've had an amazing 2 days, and I'm just recalling the energy that we captured at the start of this conference from young people who care, giving us a powerful message. The question is, over these 24, 36 hours, have we lived up to that challenge, to that promise? There's been an intensity of discussions in the plenary and in many of the breakouts. And in this final session, we're not going to neatly tie a bow and say that's it, but we're just going to aim to get some pulses, some messages, some thoughts of strength coming from this forum that's very much had the theme of scaling it up for the circular economy. I've been fascinated by many of the sessions. You've been to some of them as well?
Absolutely, and I can't believe it's only been 36 hours. I think I've had a lifetime of lessons and sharing, which is wonderful. And in fact, speaking of the program, we've had a packed program with 12 parallel sessions, and therefore we thought that it would be brilliant to hear some of the highlights from the parallel sessions and the sidetracks and so forth. And I would like us to have our actually rapporteurs on stage. So please join me in welcoming our Principal Administrator Peter Berkey from the OECD and Chairperson Siri Mäkelä from the Finnish Agenda 2030. Youth Agenda Group.
Join us.
Hello.
Hi. So you each have 5 minutes to sum up the entire World Circular Economy Forum, including all the parallel sessions. You can relax, but I think you've maybe got one or two messages.
Yes, so shall we start with you, Peter? You've been covering the innovation and strategy tracks.
Yes. Thank you, and hello to everyone. This forum started out with a rock band playing, I think, and that was, of course, here in the plenary hall, but I think the side tracks were also rock and roll. We actually had Rod Stewart on stage at some point, and I don't know where Curry is, but he's the man. So, we heard a lot of very exciting things, and I'm going to try and meet the challenge of telling you in just 4 minutes, some highlights. And of course, this will not do justice to any of the discussions, but I think it will give you a sense of what was happening. And I think a lot of what went on in the side tracks was really, identifying some of the challenges of circular economy transition, but then also a lot of optimism about the fact that we have the solutions and that actually a lot is happening. And there were discussion on roadmaps, circular economy roadmaps. What I picked up is, there's lots happening there. A lot of European countries already have roadmaps or strategies, but also beyond the EU, countries are thinking about different strategies. Now, what's really important is that these are more than waste strategies. They need to take a life cycle perspective and look at value chains in their entirety. Also, what is key is to involve, the companies, the governments, but also the people. There was a discussion on circular economy in Africa, which I had never heard about yet, and that's not a surprise because the term circular economy in Africa is simply not being used. But the people in in Africa do circular. I mean, they do recycle. They do many of the activities that we actually talk about here, and there is an opportunity for the African continent to leapfrog the linear system and go into the circular economy right away. Metrics, lots happening there as well. Lots of initiatives in the EU and beyond. What's important is that for the moment, our metrics are still essentially waste plus metrics, and the challenge is to go beyond and develop metrics that tell us more about what's happening upstream as well. And then ultimately the challenge is, with all that data that we're collecting, to actually tell appealing stories that people can buy into, that politicians can buy into. Industry, heavy industries, and the low carbon targets, the Paris Agreement targets that we have, the circular economy there is also a key solution. About 60% of the carbon emission reductions that are needed to achieve Paris can be achieved through circular economy measures in the heavy industries. And the solutions are there. And by the way, this is also the more cost-effective approach. And finally, there were discussions around education and the role of education. There's a need for new skills, new thinking, a change in values, and players in academia, but also religion, culture, and the media are going to play a really important role in diffusing that new thinking and those new values. And how can we all do something towards the circular economy in our day-to-day lives? How can we change our lifestyles? Because oftentimes this is connected to restraining oneself, consuming less, taking a shower that is maybe cold instead of hot, etc. How can we, so the challenge here is to get everyone on board. And I think what people were saying in that session is we need to make it a party. We need to, maybe be the first ones on the dance floor and make a fool out of ourselves, and then everybody else will follow and dance along. So I think that's it from, I'm very excited and energized, and I'm going to take all that energy back to Paris with me.
Fantastic. Brilliant. If you indulge me in one quick follow-up, we had a group of journalists from East Asia who asked the best question: how do we get started with a roadmap to circular economy? What would your answer be?
I think my answer would be, collect data, analyze it, and bring stakeholders together.
Brilliant.
Goodness knows what the Finnish Agenda 2030 Agenda Youth Group thought of what we are doing here. Hopefully, you've seen some interesting signs of commitment to change towards a more sustainable world by 2030. Siri Mäkelä, you were particularly looking at the social and sectoral tracks, and I think it's interesting that in contrast to the first World Circular Forum, which had a lot about kind of technology and innovation and things, much more about people and processes, and interesting to see what key messages you've picked up from your journey through the forum.
Yes, thank you. It's been really inspiring 2 days. And for me, I think the best thing in circular economy is that it kind of forces us to criticize our current economic model and the unsustainable consumption and production ways that it's based on. But what was something new that I learned here was that we need all of the actors involved in order to switch in circular economy. And I learned that for that, cities are great platforms. And they are great platforms because they form kind of their own ecosystems in which all of the actors are involved, like NGOs, companies, citizens, activists, everyone. And regarding that, we heard a great example from Mr. Gibbert about South African communities living actually already their day-to-day life in circular ways. But the downside is that the value they create is not recognized because it's in informal economy. But what we also heard, circular economy, and I think that's great. But what I think still remains a bit unclear is that how we can get from these really great examples to the system level change that we need in order to solve climate crisis. And I think most important part is that we need a common vision. And personally, I hope that the future economy is transparent, inclusive, fair, and regulated, as the audience yesterday pointed out. And the second thing that I'm sure we need is a change in our value systems. And I think we also need to let go of the growth-dependent economic model. And this is not about giving up, but actually getting more what matters. And like Ms. Timmer from One Earth noted, we have to switch from consuming to living, and I think that actually sounds really nice. And I think circular economy, and maybe economy in general, is a tool for achieving this vision of ours. And it's also a step forwards to more fair and sustainable economic model. And Ms. Noronha from UN Environment yesterday asked whether it is possible to make this kind of system-level change. And I think my answer to that would be, it has to be.
Brilliant. There is no alternative. Thank you so much. Thank you. Brilliant.
Thank you very much.
Some very powerful messages there. And saying, yeah, we're tinkering at the edges, but fundamentally, system change is in the air. In designing the World Circular Economy Forum for this year, there were kind of three particular themes that I think the organisers felt were important drivers of some of the discussions that were going on. And in a moment, we want to hear from you as to what your kind of key messages emerging from the forum are. But just a reminder, first of all, of those kind of key driving themes that are part of this forum.
That's right. So we had Scale It Up. The global scaling up of the circular economy is driven by enabling trade rules, standards, and fiscal incentives for circular goods and services, benefiting low, middle, and high-income economies equitably. Open borders are good, trade wars are bad.
There you go. The second one was very much about that fair transition to a circular economy, issues around equity. So a fair transition creates circular economy jobs and education opportunities, lowers labour taxes, and raises resource extraction and pollution costs. The wealth generated from natural resources should be shared fairly by the 100%, not the 1%.
And then there's always the question of leadership. And leadership in the European Union. The European Union shows global leadership on the circular economy by ensuring cross-cutting and top-level importance in governance and financial resourcing. The circular economy is vital in combating climate change.
So there are three themes, but goodness me, so many themes that have emerged. What we'd like to do is to invite you now to share what you think maybe your key take-home messages are related to this forum. And we're going to dust the old app off, which I know you've been using to travel around. So if you could grab your wonderful machines, or not wonderful machines. I have a non-circular, my vow for the next Circular Economy Forum is for me to have a circular mobile phone. So here we go. If you can go on to, where are we? Here we are.
Yeah.
Look at that. That's high-tech detail. So go onto the app, push message wall, push hall selection. Oh, there we are. And then Finlandia Hall. That's where we are. There we are. Let me get to it. And then we have a question. So if we can put the question up. Oh, I'm still trying to get onto the hall.
I'm glad you're doing that.
I'm glad.
Phil.
Yes. Is it working?
Yeah.
Okay. Can you put the question up? Here we are. I'm hoping
Yes.
you can do it. Brace yourselves. Stop bracing yourselves. Put the question up. Fantastic. The brace position is over. We'll now have the logo, and then we'll have the question.
It's coming, it's coming.
Tell me if there isn't one. So, basically, the question, is this working? Because when I go onto hall selection, I get Finlandia, I push on Finlandia Hall, and then it goes back to hall. So if it's not working, shake your heads and we'll move on. It's up there.
It is up there.
Right, fantastic. What's your key take-home message from the forum? So you've been absorbed in 2 days, solid discussion, listening, inspiration, challenge, problems. What we would like to know is your key take-home message from the forum. And what we'd like is 3 words. So it's, I don't know, it's climate change, or I don't know what you're going to say. But just tap in 3 words and then push send. Okay? It's working. Well, it's working on everybody's apart from mine. Maybe this is...
Maybe you've been cut off, Peter.
I think I've been disenfranchised. So, okay, so interesting. So what's emerging? Keep going. There are 2,000 of you in the hall, and I've got 112. Okay, no clue yet. That's good. Well, AI, artificial intelligence. Embrace examples. Scale up. I love this. I don't know what's going on, but I'm glad you love it. Collaborati. There you are. That's everyone could write their own collaboration in their own language. That would confuse the system. Okay, so if you've done one, I'm going to give you one chance. You can either take one of these and type it in, and that will reinforce it, or you can put another message in, up to 3 words. So you've got another go at this. Okay. Action, disruptive, brave. No clue yet. Still no clue. Okay. China, China. You have an opportunity to embarrass me here. Earth warriors, business for planet. Some reinforcing messages there. Okay, so we're going to leave that open for you, and we might come back to it towards the end. But there are some messages, and what's big? Systemic change, hope, education, act now, collaboration. There we are. That's maybe a great message coming from this forum. The danger of these forums is we've had an intensity of time in this forum talking to each other, but there are going to be 10 billion people on the planet by 2050. There's about 6 billion now, something like that. We have a chance to send a message out to the world, and what we'd like to do, just like at 8 o'clock this morning, when I thought I don't need an umbrella, and I walked to Finlandia Hall, and there was a thunderclap, lightning, thunder, and I got soaked. We would like to do a thunderclap tweet. So just put your hand up if you are a tweeter. Okay, if you're not a tweeter, there may be all sorts of reasons, but we have to communicate this message. So if you are a tweeter, what we'd like you to do is to hashtag WCEF2019. We're going to, on that site already, we've got the scale it up, make it fair, and EU lead the way if you want to repeat those. Or the other thing if you want to do is to grab the person next to you, take a selfie and say, go for it. But what we'd like to happen in 10 seconds time is for us to go viral, and it works by everybody tweeting out a message from this forum.
And I think Peter and I will show how.
We will.
Make it a try.
We are going to do a reinforcing. So
yes.
So let's
go.
Let's do it. Okay. They look tired, don't they?
They do.
Okay. Fantastic. Wonderful. That's going to go out.
That's good. Yay.
evolution will create longer arms at some point. But, okay, so if everybody tweets out to your networks, we'll be there.
We'll get the message out.
What are we going to do?
So you go to Twitter.
Yes, thank you. Okay, everybody. And if you're not tweeting, talk to your neighbor.
Yes.
Just be alive.
And get your message out.
What are we going to say?
So we're going to say, let's scale it up.
Yeah.
And remember the hashtag. And I think if you look at our faces, that's...
Yeah.
it is scaling up.
Says it all. WCEF.
F2019, and you need the hashtag.
Oh,
Yes. There you go.
yeah.
And let it off.
And I'm going to do now.
Finalizing now. Okay.
Fantastic. Okay. We'll give you 10 more seconds because the world is a big place. So we hope that some key messages have gone out to the world. Please, a plea from this forum is that we can achieve value to the power of 10, 100, 1,000 if we communicate some of the things we've learned. So please take that very much to heart as we move forwards. So I think we now want to get just 1 or 2 more learnings and perspectives around what's been going on and why this conference and this drive is so important.
And I believe we were hearing from you that there's an act now sentiment here, and really our next speaker is going to be touching upon this issue on how urgent is the need for transition to a circular economy and what kind of policies should we be driving. So let us invite someone who really knows the answers, and that is Hans Breunings, the Executive Director of the European Environment Agency. Welcome, Hans.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Hi.
All right. Hi. Well, talking about urgency and acting now to this audience feels a bit like preaching to the choir. You know? But the good news is that this choir, over 3 editions, has become a lot bigger and a lot more diverse. We've got now the African drums playing, we've got Chinese opera in the room, we've got people from Latin America who are dancing the circular economy samba, so this is good news. The other good news is that we've been talking about how we can make this century the best century ever. Because by 2050, we have promised each other that we will be 10 billion people leading a good life on this one planet that we have. Yeah? So what we need to do for that is indeed act now and understand the urgency that we are dealing with. And this urgency has been coming from several sources. Just in the last year, we all read the 1.5 degree report. Yeah? Very important, a big difference between 2 degrees and 1.5 degree. Urgency there to act. We all looked at the IPBES report on biodiversity, the 6th great extinction, 1 million species gone. Yeah? You can be sure that we will be part of the next 1 million if we don't watch out, right? The third one is, of course, the International Resource Panel, which has been a bit more central here for good reasons. And all of those 3 networks of scientists, in essence, say the same thing. We need to urgently bend the trend. The trend is not sustainable. And secondly, they're interconnected. Yeah? And that knowledge, I think, is reinforced in the last couple of years, the interconnection. It means that we understand the trade-offs and the nexus issues. It also means that if we fail on one, we will fail on the other too. That's why we need to act urgently and understand what we are dealing with. And what we're dealing with, we all know in this audience, is a set of production and consumption systems that are fundamentally unsustainable. Not at the margins, but fundamentally unsustainable. That's the urgent message coming from science. But we're also getting urgent messages from the business community. The World Economic Forum, in its risks to business for the next 10 years, is looking at 5 of those risks, climate change, water, biodiversity loss, loss of agricultural potential, resource constraints, those are real business risks. They're coming from politicians. Yeah? The number of politicians that are wearing the 17 colors now of the SDGs on their collar is enormous. Yeah? So there are the calls for action. We've heard them on stage, we hear them in all the multilateral meetings in the European Union. And we get a really strong message of urgency from civil society. We know that NGOs have been doing this for many years, but it's youngsters now that speak to us very directly. And can we be surprised that they look at I will say my generation, yeah, and they say, guys, mostly men, is this the best you can do? When did we start negotiating climate change? 1990. We're 29 years later. What has been the net result? 65% more emissions. We can explain all of that, we can rationalize, we can say we made a lot of progress, but if you're a young person and you look at us and you say, is this really the best you can do? Yeah? We started negotiating this agenda many years ago. We now have the SDGs, but we had SDGs in 1992. It was called Agenda 21. If you reread it, and I reread it again last night, yeah, and you change the language a bit, you modernize it, you've got the same messages. So by 2030, we promise each other that we will live in a low-carbon, circular economy with strong protection of natural capital. What will we do radically different in the next 11 years that we have not done in the previous 27 years? I think that is the key question that we need to address. That is the urgent question we need to address. And it means we need to go to the core of unsustainability of the systems at systemic level. That means we need to reflect on what is working, but also on what is not working. And one of the really stimulating things of coming to the World Circular Economy Forum is that you are bombarded with people with brilliant ideas, with new technologies, with solutions at whatever scale, with new bricks that actually capture CO2, with new plastics and all of it. It's great, yeah? But if all those solutions are there, and we hear that all the time, we know the solutions, yeah? Well, if we know them, why are we not implementing them? So I would plead to urgently also look at what is locking us into the old system. And that means we need to question certain technologies where we are locked in. We need to look at fiscal systems. We need to look at governance systems. We need to ask questions about the core of the financial system on which we have put very few demands in the last couple of years. Where are they in this agenda? We call it in Europe the market economy. In the US they call it capitalism. Yeah. Expecting radically different results in a system called capitalism without talking about capital seems a bit bizarre to me. So we need to ask where the real bottlenecks are, where we need to push, what we need to break through. Otherwise, we're not going to get there. Yeah, I think that is a critical message we need to send. That also means that this scaling up and speeding up is not going to happen without stepping on some toes. Yeah? We will need to break through vested interests in some sectors. We will need to reflect on systems that have served us really well in the 20th century, but are dysfunctional now. We will need to reflect on the 1% that was up there. Do we really think that the current inequality on this planet is a fertile ground for sustainability by 2030? That's the type of tough questions I think we will need to ask. Otherwise, we will not get there. And so breaking through these barriers and seeing all the opportunity and the potential that is here, if we can do that in a serious way, I think we can make this century the best century ever, yeah? Where we can actually live the good life on this planet with 10 billion people. The agenda that we have is bringing people together. I've been in this field for a couple of decades. I have never seen any global action plan that people wear on their vests. NGOs, scientists, politicians, business people, we have a common ground to discuss. Yeah? We have set up international fora to discuss. We have set up national fora to discuss. So we now need just do it. I'm not promoting Nike here. I'm saying we need to just do it, which is why I think we shouldn't discuss green public procurement much more. Just do it. It's not rocket science, right? We've been writing handbooks and giving sessions about it and conventions for 30 years. Just do it now, yeah? We shouldn't discuss environmental tax. Of course, we need to discuss environmental taxation. But after 20 years in the EU, it's going nowhere. It's still at 1.8 to 3%. And we've been discussing it the whole time. So we now need to break through it, go for it, and shift into a different direction. And of course, those who are leading need to look behind them to make sure that people are following. Because if you think you're leading, but nobody is following, you're just taking a walk. And I'm not in this business to take a walk. I'm not in this business. That doesn't motivate me in the morning. What motivates me is that you build networks, coalitions of people who see the issues and who want to break through it. And we say it will take a lot of courage to do that, a lot of political courage. Well, I dare to say that today, we know so much about the consequences of an unsustainable world that it will take more courage not to act than it will take to act. And we need to make sure as citizens that we send that message very clearly, because I think that is where we stand. If we don't change direction, we will end up where we are going, and it will be a world that is more uncertain, more dangerous, more unequal, and probably full of conflicts that we don't want. So my call to urgency is, let's follow the science, read the messages from society, trust those business leaders that want to make the change, and find the governance courage. And governance is not only politicians, the governance courage to ask the difficult questions about what is holding us back. We need to punch through these barriers and get going, because this will be the most fabulous century of humanity ever. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, please.
Oh.
Thank you very much, Hans. And as you probably noticed, the applause was fairly strong. But let me invite your fellow panelists to the stage. And we have Paula Lehtomäki, Secretary General of the Nordic Council of Ministers, joining us. Also, Vincent Biruta, Minister of Environment of Rwanda, and Kimmo Tiilikainen, the Minister of Environment, Finland. Welcome. Yes. Thank you. Thank you.
So, what we wanted to do was really just get some voices of key stakeholders, key players who are involved in this journey of transition. Following that call to action, just wanted to get one or two reflections from each of you, because you have power and influence in different ways. I would like to start very much with you, Paula Lehtomäki, Secretary General of the Nordic Council of Ministers. So the Nordic countries have been showing an extraordinary lead in this area. Countries of relative wealth have been great innovators, setting the pace. We'd just be very interested to hear one or two of your reflections on what's been happening at the Circular Economy Forum, and also that sense, maybe in this room, that good ambition is not enough. We've got to actually go even further, and a sense whether within the political sphere of the Council of Ministers you're up for doing even more.
Yes, well, thank you, and thank you for Hans also for the great speech. I, of course, can agree with everything you said there about the urgency, about the interlinkages between our climate and sustainability targets, and about the need of a system-level change or even a paradigm change in economy. And yes, really, Nordics have been and still are very ambitious on this field. We are, of course, countries in the world who also should have the opportunity to lead the way, because we have a high level of living standards, highly educated people in Nordic countries, very strong economies, and at the same time also big challenges as relates to sustainability, because having high levels of living standards usually, and also in Nordic countries, means that not our all production or consumption systems are sustainable, far from it. And therefore, we have to be very ambitious on this field, and a lot of very concrete work is already going on. What I think that, and also during these discussions today, and I believe also yesterday has come up, that in order to make that system change, we also need to analyze or know where and in what way in the system we start with. Because now we have these solutions and every kind of initiatives coming from bottom up. But to have this top-down approach, it requires that we really also have the understanding of where to start and in which way you really make the system change. And this is something that we have to do better in the Nordic countries, but then globally also, and within EU, of course.
Is your sense that the political wins, because in a sense all of you as politicians are voted in by the electorate, people put their cross in extraordinary ways on the ballot paper, is your sense that there is a growing ambition among electors to elect politicians who are going to take leadership, or do you feel you're still kind of leading people who are largely sort of ambivalent to this?
I believe, and it also shows in the recent elections in Europe and in Nordic countries, that a big part of the electorate is very keen on this issue, and they are willing to have ambitious politics. But part of the electorate is not. They have bigger worries in their everyday life. And that's why we need to pay attention to this, that we don't make this as a thing that divides us, but it should be something that unites us. And of course, we here in Nordic countries, we are in a position in the world that we have possibilities to act, but we are also very big international partners. And that's why I think that Nordic countries also bear the responsibility to do their best in order to support some other countries and parts of the world who are not in such favorable position in their sustainable path forward.
Right. I mean, part of the mantra of the 2030 agenda is, leave no one behind.
Yeah.
I just wonder whether you can illustrate as to how that's kind of happening in reality in terms of either partnering or other initiatives that are ensuring that those at a lower rung of the ladder are supported and enabled to be involved in that circular economy transition.
I think that within Nordic countries it happens in such a way that you pay attention to the impacts on such people that, impact that who needs to pay more, who is hit by the new policy, and then you find ways to support. And globally it means that we understand that different countries have very different possibilities for many things, and that we try to find the ways also to scale our solutions up to their use as well, and support them to have a sustainable, much more sustainable path forward than we have ourselves gone actually during the last decades.
Right. I mean, it's absolutely true. This is the World Circular Economy Forum, and looking at the pathway from 2017 to 2019, we're seeing a globalization in terms of the involvement in the forum. We've heard a lot of voices from Africa in particular about new initiatives and ways of being more engaged. Delighted to welcome Vincent Biruta, who's the Minister of Environment of Rwanda, and I think also chair of the African Circular Economy Alliance. You come to a forum like this to share your experiences and also to learn from others. Would be very interesting to just have one or two thoughts that are going through your mind as we look to raise the bar and take circular economy further forward.
Thank you. I would say that circular economy has been existing in Africa and operating as an informal economy. But what we need to do now is to bring the circular economy into the mainstream. We just need to put in place the policies and the legal frameworks which are needed. And we need to identify existing small-scale innovative initiatives and invest in them. We need to work with major businesses and corporations to encourage them to adopt the circular economy principles, and all the way from the product design phase to product as a service and return schemes. And we need to work with academia and research community to identify circular economy quick wins and priority areas based on country needs. In that process, we need to make sure that the transition to circular economy is inclusive. We need to invest in training and upskilling programs to make sure that circular economy is an opportunity also to create jobs for youth and women. And we need to build the partnerships with other countries and various organizations to be able to benefit from technology transfer and knowledge sharing as well. And this is the idea behind the creation of the alliance you referred to, the Africa Circular Economy Alliance, which was created with Rwanda, Nigeria, and South Africa, and alongside with the World Economic Forum, the Global Environment Facility, and the UN Environment. We are planning to adopt a charter for that alliance in August in South Africa, and it will be an opportunity also to accept other members to the alliance. And that framework will help us to be part of the global initiative in terms of adoption of circular economy.
And I mean, that's a great manifesto and very exciting, and it's wonderful to hear. In a sense, you face many similar challenges, but also have differences. I'm just wondering, in terms of the reality of collaboration, it's one of the key words that came out. People always say, oh yes, partnership and collaboration, but then either it's not fair or unequal, or it happens on someone else's terms, or whatever. I'm just interested as to, are you feeling a genuine sense of a family moving forward on this agenda, or would you want to just highlight maybe some of the conditions that would enable, for example, the African nations to be more fully engaged at transition at scale and speed?
Yes, there can be challenges for every new thing. There are challenges in place. But I think the main challenge we are facing today is related to mindset change. We have been told that we need to change our lifestyles, and we need to move from the habits to take, use, and waste resources to adopt the circular economy principles. And at this stage, I think all the continents are at the same stage. And I would even say that Africa is at an advanced stage. We are starting from a point where we have these principles in our habits already. We used to extend the life of various tools we are using. We used to share various tools, and it is a good starting point. And collaboration will come because we are all talking about a circular economy today, and there is no reason why we should be left behind, because you have also something to share. We just don't want to benefit from others. We also have our experience to share, and collaboration is possible from there.
Yeah, brilliant. And we should start looking in our diaries to work out which year the World Circular Economy Forum will be based in Africa.
Yes.
So, Kimmo Tiilikainen, one of the key messages from this forum was the pressure on the European Union to take the leadership globally on circular economy. And so far, it has been fairly promising, but obviously there's pressure moving onwards after the European elections. But also in a couple of weeks' time, Finland will be taking up the presidency of the European Union. And you've been one of the key figures in the preparations. So can you give us a sneak peek on how we're going to be pushing it forward during our presidency?
Thank you. I'm a little bit sorry for my voice, but I try to answer your question. Of course, Finland is very well prepared for the EU presidency, and I was glad to see that you are also asking EU to take the lead. EU has done a lot. We have action plan, we have strategies, but what we do need is that we need to update our strategies. I would say that we need circular economy version 2.1. And what does it mean? I think that when I start from the EU long-term strategy in climate change, we have realized when the Commission gave its proposal that, oh yeah, we can convert our energy production to CO2-free. Traffic is more difficult, but we can do it sooner or later. But what else we need to do is to make industrial processes CO2-free, make sustainable consumption and production become reality, and make systemic change throughout European societies so that we can really be carbon neutral by 2050. And circular economy is a powerful tool to promote mitigation on climate change, save biodiversity, and save our valuable natural resources. And we need to sharpen our tools by updating circular economy strategies so that we have vision, we have goal and impactful bunch of actions, variety of actions, how to get there. And a good chance to do that is when European Union is finalizing its next 5-year working program under our presidency. New Commission is coming. We can have effect on that so that EU is continuing to take the lead in circular economy.
So we'll do our best to make sure that it's on the 5-year program in a central way. But how about, I mean, the question of global governance has come up quite a few times during this forum as well, and also the need to really deeply integrate circular economy into the global governance system. I believe that Janec Potočnik has been discussing this already for a while. How would you suggest that the EU would put that forward in the global system? Because the EU obviously is a global player, and now we are expecting quite a bit from it.
EU is, of course, a powerful actor in global governance, environmental governance too, but we do need partners. We do need African countries, we do need Latin America, we do need Asia and Northern America to join our forces, because it's only not to act now, but in collaboration, like the message you gave us is. And actually, what I see now here makes me very happy. Now I return to history. I forgot what you asked, and I tell something else to you. So, actually, this is my last week as a Minister for Environment, and I'm going to tell you 2 secrets. We finalized our governmental negotiations 1 or 2 days ago. And my main task there was to postpone the negotiation that much that I can be on that stage here today as a minister. And why? The reason is that I can tell you this little piece of history. 5 years ago, Sitra arranged some big meeting for a couple of 100 representatives of Finnish business community. And then there was a political panel, representatives from parties because the elections was coming. And then we were asked, how can you promote circular economy? Can you mention circular economy in the next governmental program? I said, yes, we can. And we didn't only mention it, we make circular economy strategic goal for Finland 4 years ago. And I'm very glad to tell you that new government that will take the lead after a couple of days raises the importance of circular economy again. And
I think
once we set that goal, since then ministries and Sitra Finnish Innovation Fund, we started to work to achieve the goal. And for example, creating this World Circular Economy Forum concept, we didn't know if we just take a walk, will anyone follow, like Hans mentioned. And we saw that there are followers in Yokohama and now again here and next year in Canada. Yeah, hello to Canada. So I'm very delighted to see that this really global movement is pushing circular economy forward. We couldn't even imagine that we can take this kind of leaps. Let's say leaps. So I'm very glad to see all of you here, and I'm very glad that I have been part of this movement on my capacity as a minister. I will have something else to do after a couple of days, but I enjoy this moment.
thank you.
Maybe just leave a parting reflection to yourself, Hans. You gave a very powerful call to action about urgency. Your organization is predicated and built upon sound science, monitoring over time, and then passing messages through for those who have to make decisions. And yet we're in a world that seems selective in its acknowledgement of facts that don't suit those inconvenient truths that Al Gore talk about, seem to be even more able to be ignored or sidelined if they don't suit. We see a whole journey towards barriers, trade wars, that collaborative cooperation which has to be the stuff of the future seems to be currently challenged and in jeopardy. And I'm just wondering, maybe to offer us a further word of optimism or maybe a further word of concern. Is this just a kind of a brief squall, an ill wind for a short period we're going through, but ultimately good science, good people will get this worked through and all the rest of it? Or did we need to be actually more anxious? And if we're more anxious, maybe what's the one thing we need to do?
Well, it's not because 5 populists say that climate change is not happening that it's not happening. So, I mean, opinion, yeah. Opinions don't change this reality. I was asked 3 years ago by a representative of a big French populist party in the European Parliament, Mr. Bruinings, do you believe in climate change? And I immediately said no. And some people in the European Parliament looked at me like, oh my God, the director of the European Environment Agency doesn't believe in climate change. So I waited 3 long seconds and I said no, because it's not a belief system, it's science. Yeah? So I think we need to be vigilant. We need to call them out. We need to improve our own communication about this complexity, not by reducing it to a level of stupidity, but to find ways to explain complexity in ways that reach people, that give them the feeling that they are part of the solution, where they see agency, not only as consumers, but as citizens of a globally interconnected society. And I think we can do quite a bit better when it comes to that. And then, again, we should confront them, the merchants of doubt. And they are literally merchants. They are really well funded. Call them out. Discover why they are doing what they are doing. And fight back. And I think in the end, the planet is what it is. The systems are what they are. They cannot walk away from that. Ask one climate negationist whether they can explain the logic of what we see happening now. You want to say that our models are not good? Where's your model that explains what we observe? You don't have it? Well, you know, maybe you can come back when you have one. Huh? So, I mean, seriously.
So now is the moment not to be disheartened, but work even harder.
Yeah, we need to be vigilant.
Okay.
Like the youngster said, we need to be warriors for this century. And of course, we all have our role in this, and the role of a knowledge agency and of a civil servant is not to walk through the hallways in Brussels with a banner, but to play my role in a decent way, communicate what we see, create platforms that speak science, and link it to policies that can drive change. Yeah. And if we do that better, I think we do our job.
Great. And just finally, with our other participants or other panelists, we asked everybody if they wanted to offer a kind of 3-word message, a take-home. If you have an audience locked here listening to you, if you had just one short final message that we should take away ringing in our ears, Kimo, what should it be?
Oh, I already said everything, but I repeat, act now.
Okay. Vincent.
I consider all these people here as leaders for circular economy, and let's make sure that it is not a lonely walk we are having, but we are leading the movement, and I think it is possible.
Brilliant. And Paula?
If you don't know exactly what to do something that takes us to the right direction.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, our panel, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Kiitos. Thank you. All right, wow.
Well, we needed some autumn leaves.
I know.
What could they be?
We haven't had the summer yet, so let's not go too fast, although we need to run.
Indeed.
But nonetheless, this is exciting now, and I think what happens next with the WCEF in 2020, and I think we really need to ask Hilary Geller, Canada's Assistant Deputy Minister for Environment and Climate Change. Welcome.
Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you to Citra for the invitation to speak at the 2019 World Circular Economy Forum in beautiful Helsinki. Je suis très heureuse d'être ici au nom de l'honorable Catherine McKenna, ministre de l'Environnement et du Changement climatique du Canada, and to tell you how excited we are that the World Circular Economy Forum will take place in Canada in the fall of 2020. We're truly honored to partner with Citra in hosting the forum, which will be the first event of its kind in North America. We look forward to welcoming all of you next year to showcase the Canadian talent and innovation being applied to develop circular economy solutions and further building awareness of and engagement around the circular economy in Canada. I'd now like to take just a few moments to reflect on the circular economy from a Canadian perspective and hopefully plant some seeds to inform the dialogue over the coming year. First of all, let me just say that we recognize that the circular economy is a team sport, not hockey necessarily. Thank you for that, although both Finland and Canada do quite well. Thank you for that. But in the context of the circular economy, I think the team sport is evidenced by all the Canadians here today. I have colleagues with me from our departments of Innovation, Science and Economic Development, from the Department of Agriculture, from our Natural Resources Department, and our Global Affairs Department, as well as a delegation of Canadians from across the country, from research institutes, businesses, not-for-profit organizations, and other sustainability experts who are truly leaders in driving innovation, reducing waste, and reaching out and testing circular economy opportunities for Canada. I think it's fair to say that although the term is not widely known at home, there is a growing recognition that our take, make, dispose practices and lifestyles are not sustainable. And that recognition is most often expressed in concerns about plastic waste, which I will touch on just briefly in a moment or two. But important steps are being taken in Canada to shift thinking and approaches to more efficiently manage and sustainably use our resources for the benefit of the environment and the economy. Indeed, governments at all levels in Canada, businesses, social enterprises, and individuals are moving to circularity, supported by not-for-profit organizations, think tanks, and research institutes. For example, the same large multinational corporations that are taking action globally are also active in Canada to help advance the circular economy and leverage the power of their international supply chains. But small and medium enterprises, which are responsible for almost 90% of the private labor force in Canada, are also at the forefront. Canadian companies are becoming circular economy innovators in areas ranging from advanced plastics recycling, waste to energy and bioenergy, product refurbishment, carbon capture and reuse. I could go on. And they're also active, I think it's important to note, all across our very large country, including in the north, where the unique circumstances call for unique solutions. We've also put innovative mechanisms in place to support these companies. For example, the Government of Canada has established a Clean Growth Hub, which locates several departments in a one-stop shop to connect clean technology producers and users with the supports and services that they may need. In addition, several very new Canadian policies and initiatives are incorporating circular concepts. For example, in recognition of the federal government's purchasing power, we have a leading green procurement strategy that's recently been updated to deal with the problem of plastic waste. Canada's Minerals and Metals Plan, just released in March of this year, envisions a circular economy where mine wastes are transformed into useful products. And examples of this in action are found in the provinces of British Columbia and Quebec, where smelters not only process mined materials, but they also recycle scrap, including batteries and electronics. Another example is the forestry sector, another thing we have in common with our friends in Finland. In September 2017, the Canadian Council of Forest Ministers launched a Canadian Forest Bioeconomy Framework to support our move to a lower carbon economy. And just last month, industry responded by launching its own national bioeconomy strategy, a blueprint for working with the Canadian government on accelerating the opportunity. But I think it's also important to recognize, and certainly I heard mention of this here, that scaling up innovation required to advance the circular economy is going to be difficult without the financial sector. And in recognition of the fact that the right finance and investment structures can help build the low-carbon, sustainable economy, Canada's Ministers of Environment and Finance struck a sustainable finance panel last spring, headed by a former Deputy Governor of the Bank of Canada. That panel is due to release its final report very shortly, and we're confident that the insights and recommendations it will offer will be an important contribution to accelerating action. Now, back to plastics. As I mentioned earlier, there's a significant concern among Canadians about plastic waste, and this for many is the way into thinking for the very first time about a circular economy. A recent poll indicated that 9 out of 10 Canadians are very concerned about plastic pollution, and over 80% want government action. We all know that too much plastic is ending up in landfill or in our oceans instead of being recycled and reused. And that's why Canada cooperated with other countries during Canada's G7 presidency last year to spearhead the Ocean Plastics Charter. As you know, that charter includes ambitious action and targets to move towards a more resource-efficient and sustainable approach to managing plastics. We're really pleased that to date 21 governments and over 60 businesses and organizations have endorsed the charter, and we will always welcome others to come on board. Canada is also investing in global solutions, providing $100 million to support developing countries' efforts to prevent plastic waste from ending up in oceans. And back at home, in November of last year, Minister McKenna and all of Canada's provincial and territorial environment ministers adopted the Canada-wide strategy on zero plastic waste, which sets out an ambitious vision of a circular economy for plastics. All of Canada's environment ministers are going to be getting together again in a few weeks in Halifax, and we are really anticipating further details on how they are going to move forward together on eliminating plastic waste in Canada. So plastics is for us, policy wonks in the Environment Department, something of a living lab. It's going to allow us to learn what's needed in a very real way, a tangible way, to scale up circular economy approaches in our unique circumstances. And we're committing to harvesting those lessons that will be so important as we move forward on other solutions. So, in conclusion, let me come full circle from where I began. We have a Canadian team here today from across government and across society. That same team is looking to developing an amazing and engaging program and welcoming you all to Canada. I am just going to pause for a brief commercial break at the request of some of those Canadian partners and say that there's actually a side event tomorrow at 1 o'clock, take note, at the Hotel Arthur, where we're going to have a conversation about what the event next year could look like, what we could focus on, the kinds of speakers we could have, the themes. So please, we invite you to come and join us. Registration is online through the app, so hope to see you there. Donc, en conclusion, je voudrais simplement dire que le Canada partage les objectifs communs d'exploration et de promotion d'un avenir durable. And it is with this in mind that I would like to once again thank Citra for hosting the forum and reiterate on behalf of Minister McKenna that next fall we are all looking forward to saying, welcome to Canada, bienvenue au Canada. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, and it's exciting to be passing the ball into your court for 2020. And no more sporting analogies or I'll be skating on thin ice. This forum has been brought together through the Herculean efforts of so many people, many of them located within Citra, extraordinary organization with such a zeal and an ambition. And to offer us some closing remarks at the end of this conference, please give a huge, rip-roaring WCEF 2019 welcome back to the platform to none other than the Director of Citra, Mari Pansar.
So, dear friends, what an incredible 2 days it has been. I want to express my warmest thank you to our key partners, our speakers, our participants, and also our facilitators. And a special thank you I want to express to Minister Kimmo Tiilikainen for all the collaboration that we have been doing during the past years. And you have really done pioneering work in the field of circular economy, not only in Finland, but also in EU and globally. And I am sure, at least I wish, that this cooperation continues in some form in your new position. I sincerely hope so. And of course, a warm thank you for the amazing Sitra team that once again made this all happen. So during the past 2 days, we have had a chance to see old friends and meet new people and discuss the best ways to advance the circular economy globally. And these encounters have been extremely valuable, at least for me, and also critically important due to the great challenge that we are facing. And we all know that great challenge. Our world is encountering a deep global sustainability crisis that has 3 dimensions: the climate crisis, the biodiversity crisis, and the overuse crisis of natural resources. And in order to solve the climate crisis, global carbon dioxide emissions must be halved in next 10 years. And after 30 years, we must achieve negative carbon dioxide emissions to keep the global warming below the critical 1.5 degrees. Dear friends, that requires almost a miracle. With the biodiversity crisis, we have even less time to act. And as mentioned many times during the forum, our economic model today is deeply unsustainable. And according to United Nations, the extraction and processing of natural resources causes half of the global air emissions and 90% of the global biodiversity loss. And still only 9% of the materials remain in circulation. To counter this, the circular economy is the most powerful solution. And we simply must make better use of the materials that already exist in the societies instead of extracting more and more resources, which in turn causes more and more air pollution and kills off more and more species. We must be better in adapting the circular economy tools and technologies to solve this challenge, because they do already exist. And there are many good things happening around the world, as we have heard during the forum, but we are running against the clock. And if we don't run faster, we will lose the race. We must also reinvent our understanding of well-being and learn to appreciate the nature once again. Dear friends, before, humans used to see nature as a partner, and many indigenous people still do. Now we see nature as a resource that can be infinitely exploited and discarded after use. Mankind is playing a kind of Jenga game with nature. In Jenga, the players take turns in removing one block at a time from a tower constructed of wooden blocks. The game ends when the whole tower falls. We people are continually taking blocks from nature and being pleased that the structure did not collapse during our turn. But at some point, the final block will eventually be removed and the whole structure will fall. We cannot let this happen, and this needs to change. So, every time we make a decision, we should evaluate what it means for nature and future generations. According to the Great Law of Peace Constitution of the Iroquois people of North America, the effects of decisions must be evaluated for the next 7 generations. If a decision is made to use river for fishing, what about the 7th generation of the community? What does the decision mean for them in terms of fish? And we should learn from the Iroquois people, ensuring that the next 7 generations will live on a planet that is not several degrees hotter and tormented by wildfires, hurricanes, and droughts. That means that we must make the correct decisions today. And we all have a role to play. We can adjust the way we get from one place to another, what kind of houses we live in, and what we eat. We can ensure our governments have the long-term perspective in mind and elect responsible and ambitious leaders. And we can support businesses that offer circular solutions by buying their products and services, creating employment and sources of income for the next 7 generations. Together, we really have the power to scale up the circular economy globally. And I am confident that we can win this race. And I am most confident because of all of you here who have been working hard to make circular economy a reality all over the world. So, ladies and gentlemen, we are about to close our event in Helsinki, but as was announced, the World Circular Economy Forum story continues, and the 4th forum will be organized across the oceans in Canada, and I sincerely wish that we all will meet there. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mari. And really, it's time to say thank yous now, Peter, I believe. And really, thank you to the participants. Thank you to all the experts, thinkers. Thank you for pushing this forward. And the program is over, but the fun obviously isn't. We are still going to have some side events tomorrow, and obviously the work continues.
And thank you, Vera, for being a wonderful companion
well,
through these
thank
2
you,
days. We've
Peter.
enjoyed it. Just one parting thought before the "it's not over yet" turns into "ha." And that's just, if you're thinking of some summer reading, okay, on the beach or wherever you're going to be, and you're trying to make sense of, this feels like a new system, a new regenerative system that's gentle on the environment, opportunities for all. One book I read last year which just changed my outlook was a little book called Donut Economics by a lady called Kate Raworth. Donut Economics, Kate Raworth. Buy one, read it, and then buy 10 and send them to people who need to think about the possibility of how we create an elegant transition to a new regenerative circular economic system. My tip for the week. But talk to me about it when we're down at the pool, because 700 of you crazily have registered to come to the pool party. It's down at the Alice, the Smart and Clean pool party down at the Alice pool. You can lead or you can follow, but 700 people will be making their way down there. Take your swimming, your bathing costume if you want to be Finnish for a day. Also take your badge. I believe that they don't dissolve in water for at least 6 hours. So just to say, there are 700 people who have registered. If you've registered and you're not going, worth telling the registration desk. But if you haven't registered, just try at the registration desk in case there's a space. But this is one of only 12 days in the summer when the sun shines and it's 19 degrees at 9 o'clock in the evening. Oh. So we look forward. Is that a foul slur?
Oh, I was about to say that only an Englishman would say that.
Absolutely.
Looking at temperatures now.
I always come to Finland for the warm weather, and you've not disappointed this year. Thanks for participating, for speaking, to be engaged, collaborate, enjoy, communicate, drink something, eat, and maybe at some point we shall all be merry together. And we'll see you all in Canada.
Thank you very much. Bye for now. Thank you.